Okay. You're still doing it. It doesn't go to meeting. I'm sending it to you just in case I don't.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 3:20, and I do apologize for the delay, and I am going to apologize for technical difficulties. I cannot access the Zoom meeting or the internet on my laptop. So I'll work on that, but we'll just proceed with the meeting. Anyone who couldn't join us and wanted to join on Zoom, these meetings are all recorded, and I also gave my phone number if anybody calls in. I might be able to get them into the meeting with us, but I am sorry for all of this. First off, I guess what we'll start with is okay. This is just a preliminary matter, and we have a bunch of minutes that were not approved. Did all of you receive those by email? Did you take a look at them? If there's anyone that didn't see them, let me know. I did not bring copies. I was just relying on everybody having them electronically. But I will tell you, we're only missing one set of minutes. They'll be ready on the road. But the ones to approve today would be for meetings 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Do you need a motion for that?
Would you all like to approve those as a slate, or would you prefer to go through one at a time? Does anyone have any objections to any single set of minutes? Then would everyone be all right if we did that as one slate? Thank you.
Motion to approve the slate is submitted.
Thank you, David. Is there a second? Second by John. Okay.
Those are reading number 3 to what number?
3 to 8, yes. And that will bring us up to date. Minutes from meeting number 1 were approved and accepted way back. But number 2 was missing, and that will have to be corrected going forward. But this will bring us up to date. So thank you very much. We'll just take a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. Okay, the next order of business is going to be the OPM RSS status. And I am going to turn this over to Dan Doucette to let you all know what work has been going on with the RFS working group. They've been preparing the language to be submitted to MSBA, and we want to get that in before December 18th. That's our deadline. And then it will go into the Central Register on January 1st. And I know you've heard this before, but that's really an important piece of today's agenda, because after you hear what Dan explains and some of the other members of that working group basically chime in if we need to, we will take a vote of this board as to whether to submit that to the MSBA. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, at the request of the chair, we did a deep dive into the document, and just background is that the MSBA document is a template where there are only a few things that we can change. But those things that we can change involve some strategic discussions and things that they require us to tell them about. And the first 4 sections of the document, which I'm sure you all have seen, the rough document, you've seen some of the comments that have come out, and last Friday I sent out a summary by section of what we think are the key strategic and points of emphasis that apply to the Peabody plan. There are different people who are responsible for these sections, and I will ask for that, and I'll go through those one at a time. But I do have some extras of the strategic points to go by, and I'll pass those out, but those were circulated by an email from Friday after our discussion meeting yesterday. I did add one thing to that list, but I'll start in with the first decision point and the first person who has some input on that, and that is His Honor the Mayor, because what they asked for, we've determined that we can't get away from putting in a number, is the range of cost estimates for the entire project.
Yeah, and that's, I kind of feel it's a tough spot to be put in to kind of give a number right now, and we haven't even discussed it with the project manager or certainly with an architect team. We haven't even had those meetings yet and haven't hired anybody. So, I kind of felt like we are allowed to do a range, right?
Yes.
All right. So I was just thinking something like 250 to 400, 250 to 400. I thought that would be fair. It's just a tough spot to be put in to make a determination about the cost of the building. We haven't even started to get into a discussion about. So I was thinking a pretty wide range, and we'll make decisions and talk it through as we go along. But I was thinking 250 to 400.
Excuse me. I hate to chime in, but I think that 400 is a little low based upon what we're looking at for costs and things like that. 3-4 years out, I feel a little more comfortable with 450.
250 to 450?
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
I think one thing people need to remember, if you see the prices, there are always headlines in the newspapers about a lot of the new high schools that are being built. Some of the things that we are already saving money on is we want to build on this property. We own this property. Some of those other schools, they had to go out and buy property, which is huge. We want to save some of the building. For example, the field house and the auditorium. That is going to save money going forward. So I'll be honest, I think it's a pretty good range. You never know what's going to happen with inflation and tariffs and all the costs of construction. But I do know that we're very cautious with the taxpayers' money, and we're very careful when we do plan projects. So I think right now that's a very reasonable price range. Cost, I should say cost range. And I know, and Dan can explain it, by setting that range, that's going to help with going forward with the people who would be qualified to work on our project. John?
I'm all set.
So, I was just, this is not asking a question, right, but a lot of questions still out there. What happens when we get our OPM, we get our design, and we're designing a school to meet the needs of today and way down the road? So we're going to design this to the best of our ability. We come up with a cost estimate that is beyond that 450. What is there any relief on that? Is there a way to go back and ask? How is that?
What happens is we would get a project funding agreement with the MSBA, and that's based on the feasibility study. So we're not locked in. This just lets an OPM know what they're sort of bargaining for.
Okay. Thank you for the option.
And I think Dave's right. I think 250 to 450 is a good range. It's not going to be 250. It's certainly going to be more than that. And I think 450 is a kind of a good range to put it. And again, I want to make sure everybody knows that's the total cost of the project. The MSBA through the state would be paying somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 65% of that. So, but we have to determine a number now, and I feel comfortable 250 to 450. Please, if anybody has a different thought on it, and again, we're not held to this. It's not a drop-dead number for us in the future, but they're asking for a number now. I think that's probably the right range.
Can I just I just want to make a note that at our first planning meeting, we discussed that the project would be approximately $500 million. Just throwing that out there, that came up in one of our prior meetings.
So with that in place, just to give you and this is something I'm going to talk about as we get further into this, is things change or stay the same as we get into the next decision that we have to make, which is to hire a designer, an architect. And in the MSBA template for architects, they want us to estimate the actual building cost, not the total cost of the project with all the soft costs and what we think might be ineligible. So it's a very interesting process, but at that point, we will have an OPM on board to help us with drafting that. This we do all on our own, but luckily we've done this before. The second section is background information on the City of Peabody and schools. We're using the Welch request for services and that OPM process as a guide, but the description of current PVMHS conditions and how the building is organized is in there, and Bev has volunteered to do that. There are no decision points on that. It's just, what is it that we have now? And I think we all know what we have now. So that'll be put into the draft and decided upon or fine-tuned as we go along.
Dan, did you receive the draft under the...
Yeah. So I'm seeing stuff from Bev on that, and we'll get into that in a little more depth. But for the most part, we've already described all this stuff when we did the Welch in terms of how the city is organized and so forth. And the high school is mostly coming from the statement of interest, which you've all been familiar with. The third section is the superintendent and the principal will draft an outline for the new project, and that heading is project objectives. There are some decision points on that, but and we did talk about that on Monday. Those are the two people who know the most about what our plans are going forward at any number of levels in terms of the building. So in the decision points that I listed in my outline, do the members of the committee have specific programs or matters that they want to make sure that are included in the project narrative? And that's more of a question not to me, but to Josh and to Brooke. And I open up for that discussion. Right.
And so in general, what we would do is we did a program description in this statement of interest that I worked on with Bev, and that's a really strong document. And then they require for us a Chapter 74 viability document, which is part of our submission as well. So we'll take the information in the two of those things that we've discussed, combine them, and that's really what we'll be putting in. And it's not binding, but it's all the things that we've talked about so far. So we'll continue a lot of the programs we have and the specialty things that we have that we've put in there. There's certain things here like the planetarium that is important to us that will continue. And then we want to maintain all of our vocational programs and then expanding. I think we talked about the 3 different programs that we expand to.
How many programs have you got in your initial projections?
So we currently have 6, and we have an innovation pathway in business. So those 7 programs, we're hoping by the time that opens, business will be a full CTE program. So that'll be 7, and we're looking to add 3. We're looking to add like a carpentry woodworking one. We're looking to add, was it carpentry or was it electrical? I don't think we were doing HVAC. We were doing plumbing. I guess the plumbing / HVAC, yeah. And then we were looking at the aviation as a potential. It's definitely not a done deal. That takes some time. But those were the 3. So 2 with big hands-on and the aviation maintenance.
There's room for additional if we identify?
Absolutely. And we're not tied to all of these. It's just this is sort of what we've talked about. I think it was electrical and plumbing were the 2 that we wanted to do. Electrical and plumbing, yeah, we didn't do carpentry. It was electrical and plumbing, and then potentially looking at the aviation maintenance. So that we'd have 10 potential. And there's a lot that goes into that as far as whether they get approved or whatnot. But I think we had said, want to try to bring some of the hands-on trade type ones back to PV.
And one other, multimedia and broadcast.
Yes, I think that's what we're hoping the business one would turn into.
Right.
So those, and we have those in the Chapter 74 viability document, so we'll use that similar language in this submission.
Thank you.
One of the other things that came out of Monday's discussion, and I want to make sure that we address this in the document, is how are we organized at the administrative level at Peabody High? And the example that I want to use that most of you should be familiar with is that when we built the Higgins, we wanted to keep the grade levels together in the new building, and we wanted the building to be built on our program as opposed to them telling us, well, that you'll fit them into a cookie cutter type of design. And again, some of this carries forward to the hiring of an architect, but I think we want to come out and say that we're comfortable as a district with the way that the high school is organized, from the superintendent down to the principal to the house-masters and things like that. So I want to make sure that that's in there so that all these people going forward know how we run this program, not like any other, where we want to talk about how Peabody does it. And they have to deal with us because they are the owners and manager. And again, some of that will carry forward into the architects, but we'll also have an OPM on board to help us guide that. The second item, which I added based upon yesterday's discussion, will the SBC state that the preferred site is the current campus? And I added that because the SBA actually requires some examination of alternate sites. Frankly, there aren't any in Peabody. And we just want to state up front that, don't do what's necessary to satisfy the MSBA handlers, but you don't want to spend resources or money looking at these other things other than what the MSBA requires. And to Bev's point from earlier, we own this campus. Anywhere else in Peabody that's a similar size would have to buy land, and that would be included, obviously, in any cost discussion. So that's the second point. And then the third point on that is they ask us to project out the plan for feasibility study, the design development, and the construction. And there are dates that are in the template. Frankly, some of them are probably short, and some of them are probably long. But if everyone's comfortable with those projections, and then add on, take those dates, and then say, look, we should have an OPM on board by 1st of April, and then just add those dates. But I don't want to surprise anyone with where we're projecting out the dates going forward. And again, these are preliminary. They'll be revised when we go out for architects with the help of an OPM. But they do ask us to include that in Section 3.
On that, if I could, I actually think that's kind of right along with what we've been talking about. 2 years of planning, 2 to 3 years of construction. That's kind of what, because we're already 1 year into the planning. So there'd be 2 more years of, let's say, planning and design and all of that, getting our financing in order and everything, and then 2 to 3 years of construction. I think that's fair.
So the first dates, basically, the clock starts ticking when the OPM is hired. And then we go out and get an architect, and then we continue on. So those are things that they want us to have in there at some point, but again, they're all subject to change. And we'll probably revise them when we go out and look for an architect. Any more questions on Section 3 and the decision points in that section?
So when you say an architect, that's an architectural team, right?
Oh, yeah.
With him comes his electrical, structural, fire protection, civil.
There's 30 different sub-trades under the architect, and I don't want to jump too far ahead in the process, but we are very particular about who some of the major providers are under the architect, because like HVAC, the MEP side of things is like half the building, and we don't want somebody who's not worked with the architect before, but we'll get into that when we hire our architect.
I just want to clarify that.
A lot of times it's not the architect that creates an issue, it's the subconsultants. And I can get into that and spend a couple of hours on that based on our experience. But we're jumping ahead, but your point's well taken. We've dealt with that before. So, anything else on section 3? Moving on to section 4, which I've been assigned by the chair. But based upon having done this several times for MSBA core programs, but also when we did the new public safety building, there are some things that I'm a big believer in establishing minimum criteria that says, look, if you don't meet these requirements, please, step aside, or we want to be upfront as to what we're looking for. And just anybody that meets the 2 minimums that's in the MSBA template isn't enough. So we have crafted 4 minimums that are listed in the document, and I'll just review them quickly. The first is an OPM on an MSBA core program of a completed, and these are all for completed projects, for building housing grades 9 through 10 through 12 with CTE programs. We don't want somebody who's done an elementary school. We don't want somebody who's done an incomplete building. We want somebody who's done a comprehensive high school. The second is MSBA core programs delivered using construction manager at risk. Even though the MSBA won't allow us to make that decision officially now, they do allow us, and I'm using the Salem project as a template, that's what they clearly had a preference in. And I just want to put that on there, and we can have a discussion if anybody feels that there's some questions you have on that. We were very successful in doing that with the Welsh program. We've got a very good team on board for HQ3, and we think, based on our experience, that will work given how complex and the size of the new high school project. The third item is total project budget of $250 million or greater. Well, we sort of touched on that earlier with the mayor's points on the total project. That will also, by the way, get us to the question about, well, how much experience going backwards do you want? The simple fact is there's very few old programs that are at $250 million. Just to throw an example, Higgins was done for $90 million total project. So, and that's going back several years. But again, a high school project, a large project of $250 million or greater, we think that will stress that we're looking for a larger project and a larger commitment. And finally, an MSBA project requiring an override or debt exclusion public vote. And we put this out there, not saying that we are going to have it, but that if it's decided based on how the numbers come out, that we would do that. We don't want somebody on board who's never done it before or do not understand that for ethics and other reasons, our whole program is within guardrails as to how the information is put out there, who can speak about what, when the vote is actually on the table for people to vote on. So again, we don't want people who don't have any experience doing this, even though who knows, we may not have one. But we don't want somebody who has to start out working with us the first time. So those are the 4 decision points on minimums, and I'll open it up to any questions through the chair.
John?
Just on the section 4, item number 3, is $250 million a specific number that was chosen, or if you have a $250 million project, you have a $400 million project, those can be drastically different in size and scope and capability management? Is there a reason for 250 and not a higher number was chosen? I'm just looking for, again, we want quality, we want somebody that has experiences. and we're going to be in that upper number? Does it open any risk having it at a lower number?
Medford recently went through the program. They used 2 to 600.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not uncommon to have a wide range in case you choose to do a reno, which is one of the options that you could do a very cost-effective way, and we want to make sure that people can deal with that range. But they got a great OPM. I think they just picked them, and they had a huge range, 2 to 600, because they had no idea.
Right.
And they're also a comprehensive high school with CTE programs, so it could have gone either way. So I think having the big range like this is good.
Yeah, I don't have experience. Just the scope of project size and the dollar range is different.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts us to have the lower range, but it makes people who are within a certain framework to be able to do. Firms understanding that capacity.
Thank you.
And just so people realize, we went through this same type of angst with the Higgins and with the Welch, coming up with that preliminary number, because it's almost backwards. They're telling you, all right, tell us how much money you think this project is going to cost, and we have absolutely nothing in front of us about what the project will truly entail. And so you're not alone. Today was deja vu for those of us who've done it before. It's a tough decision because of where it occurs in the process. It's just how MSBA does it. But it does help, and that $250 million is more or less like the threshold that a firm is going to know when they see that this is a big project and they need to be qualified to be able to handle that project. So it really does help to narrow the appropriate companies. And it's just, it goes against everything you would think of that would be normal, of finding out how much it's really going to cost. I know, it's hard.
No, that explanation helps.
Yeah, you're not alone. Very good company.
I'll move on to the next group of items, which are there are 11 evaluative criteria that are required for us to include in the RFS. They're not the only 11. They do allow us to add some things. In what I sent out last week, there are the extra items as well as something on item number 3. Again, which there is language that we are going to borrow from Salem that basically says on that criteria we're assuming that we're going to do CM at risk. And again, we want to hit it over the head with these people is that we're not going to do design bid build. We want you to have a track record in CM at risk. Then we move on to a new item concerning phased occupied project experiences. Again, the 11 items don't get into that particular type of project delivery. We learned a lot from the Welch School, particularly, about that. And so we now know exactly what to ask for. And to say, look, we anticipate, given the programmatic description, that we have a high likelihood of hoping, or we have a high hope that we can reuse the auditorium in the field house. Well, that becomes phased and occupied project delivery. So what experience do you have with that? And we learned a lot from getting the responses back during the Welch project about some ideas of how some of the companies are doing that already. The other item is item 13, which is, again, an item concerning stakeholder involvement, including public votes. That kind of opens the door to where we are planning to do the working groups, and I've been talking about organizing working groups based, again, on our experience with the 2 core programs that we've already done. And that gets into the whole stakeholder discussion, which is, if people come to you asking about our athletic facilities, we'll have a working group for that. There'll be a working group for securities, etc. So these are things that we want an OPM who's familiar with that way of involving the public, and also that all of that works up to the point of a potential public vote where these people become, to a certain degree, advocates for us. And again, there's guardrails for that, but at least it gets more people aware of what our project is involved with, as opposed to just sending out slide decks or having the occasional public meeting. A lot of work on the final product is done in these working groups, and item 13 gets into that. Are there any questions on the evaluation criteria? And the scoring, we've got some things in there about scoring, but those are a little more set in stone, but I'll entertain through the chair any questions.
Julie, if you need a vote, I had to leave about 5 minutes ago, and I know Council Peach and Chief Dallin cannot get in,
I know.
so I have to step out.
Okay. Let's see. Let me see.
I don't vote.
Minus your 13 are in the room.
Right, minus 2. So we have 10. 10. 10 is half of the voting members. So we should be okay. All right, thank you, Julie. And
But just to remind everybody, a vote is not required by the MSBA process.
That's right. We're doing this to ensure that MSBA knows that we totally vetted this entire process with all of you.
Yeah, I've said this before and I'll say it again. There's amazing things that the MSBA requires us to vote on.
Thanks.
And then there's other things that it's mind-numbing why they don't ask us to take a vote on some of these other deliverables. But for this exercise, there is no MSBA vote required. It's just the opinion of the chair and the mayor that we ought to do that for the record.
So having you discuss this and understand it is very important going forward, because this is key to being able to get MSBA to let us proceed. A lot of things, and I know people are frustrated, they want to be on the working groups. They want to start talking about the bricks and mortar and, athletic facilities and everything. We have to wait for an OPM so that they can be present as we have those discussions, and especially with the design team, they need to be able to go to those meetings with those working groups and hear what they say and be able to listen to what they want. So this is key, and the rubber will hit the road on January 1st, and we'll find out the names of the companies that want to work with us. And then there's a whole other process of hiring them. But this is really a big step, and we felt it was important to get your input and hopefully support on sending this in.
And our experience is there's some things where we sort of push the envelope on these submittals, and they may be somewhat reluctant to go along with what we've asked for, but if we have a public vote of the building committee where the mayor and the chair sit and all of you participate, I think that gives us more leverage in case there's any little pushback after we send it into them next month. Yeah. We try to take their template and say, thank you very much. We understand it's written for the districts that have never built a building before, but we have, and we have experience that we know isn't in the document or we think can be modified in some way, shape, or form. Finally, there are 2 additional items under evaluation where we go with the shortlisted firms, however many those might be. And the first item is performance on similar sized projects. That is every project that meets the dollar threshold that again get up toward the minimums. We're not going to evaluate performance on an elementary school project. We want similar projects, and that's going to get somewhat into Well, sometimes we get asked, what's a similar sized project? Well, look at section 3, where we have section 4 in front, where we have the minimums. So we want to evaluate based on the metrics that we put in that extra item, how they've done, as opposed to, well, just give us the information and we don't look at it in any further depth. The second item is performance on the most similar size project. And our experience has been that when we've hired architects and OPMs in past MSBA projects, and when we did the public safety building, at interviews we say, we want you to concentrate on the project that you think is the closest to what we are looking for here in Peabody. We don't care about all the other ones, and we're going to get a long list from every company of every project they ever did, because that's what the designers, the OPM template asked them to produce. We want them to say, this is the most similar project, and then we're going to talk to them in some depth about the dynamics of that job. And again, that gets up to perhaps something that's in the minimum that they qualify on, but we want to really tie into that, and hopefully it might be a project that you've already gone out and looked at when you've done your walk-arounds in some of the other districts. So those are the two that we add on top of the two we add in the basic screening that gets to when we do some interviews. And there's some more dynamics with interviews that we'll work on probably in the month of January as the stuff goes out and in. But those are the other two items that we've presented to you, and again, through the chair, I'll have any questions.
Chair, it's just a small point, but is it worth on those two items similar size and scope instead of just size?
Yeah.
I think that kind of includes renovations and all of the topics that we talked about, rather than just dollar values or square footage.
Yep.
And on the papers that were sent to you by Deanne, if you're looking through them, this is the section, and it says from the Welch on your paperwork. It's going to be changed, but that was what we used when we were doing the Welch School RFS, and we really liked that focus and that language, so that's what we'll use, and it will be, of course, corrected for this project, but adding that in will help.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me of what was written for that. What the document from the Welch does say is past performance of the respondent on a single project that is similar in size, enrollment, and grade configuration to that of the Welch Elementary School. And we just X that out and put in Peabody High School.
Right.
So that gets the scope, I think, also.
Just a question.
Yeah.
So when you interview these people, right, and you ask them about their performance in a certain job, that's like, me asking, hey, how's your performance on the city council?
Not good.
Stellar. But in other words, who's really looking over that to give you the true answer? Because clearly they're gonna embellish.
We made calls.
Yeah.
References.
References
Okay.
afterwards. Oh, believe me, I've had calls
'cause, I mean-
from other jobs where they've called me and said, how did they do on X, Y, and Z? Yeah, and you
Okay.
have to do that under the MSBA rules.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, and so it's a good question because it
There's a lot
does.
of creative talkers out there.
Oh, yeah.
We have experienced, and we're going to deal with this at the interview level, is we have experienced a sales team that's come in and done the interviews, but they're not the people who are actually going to do the job. And we find that out when we do our reference calls.
Yeah.
So these are dynamics of the interview process that we are, as a team, familiar with because we've done it before. And we kind of know where to trust but verify.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
This sort of brings up the point of, there's no such thing as a bad reference. Do you get a list of all the projects that they work on, whether they've listed them as references or not?
Yeah.
So that you can call the ones that...
Public record.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would.
This-
I'll call the ones they didn't put on the...
And ultimately, we cross-reference that against the MSBA inventory of projects, which is given to the MSBA Board of Directors every other month. So we can do, it's not easy, but we can do searches of that document and come up with individual architects or OPMs. Those are all listed. The only thing that's not listed on that document is the value of the project. But we can cross-reference stuff easily, but we can, if Company X puts their name into Peabody and they make it past the first level, we'll go in and look at their MSBA core projects and verify. And then there's that thing called the internet.
Yes, Google it. These questions, too, will actually help us formulate our interview questions when we do interview the firms to follow up on things. That's, again, why this document is so important and critical of the whole process. There are a lot of things that build off of it. Any other questions? I do want to give everybody an example. When you look at that sheet that we had, and it has points on the 11 or really 13 items that we want to look at, we assign points on those as to the value of someone in their work. And one of the things that we did at our meeting yesterday, we raised the points on, this is just a good example to show you, number 8, familiarity with Northeast Collaborative for High Performance Schools, or U.S. Green Building Council's LEED for school rating system. It's always been a priority to have energy efficient and sustainable buildings. So we're going to give that 8 points, depending on how the people did their project. We'll be able to evaluate their work. Are they familiar with LEED? Have they done projects that have earned the LEED certification? It really comes into play with the architects, but you need OPMs to be aware of it too, and to see what they have done as far as their own practices that they enforce with the other members of the team, the designer and the construction company, because that's one of the points that people have raised throughout the discussion about the school and about any building in Peabody. They want it to be energy efficient. We were really fortunate. Higgins is LEED certified, and the Welch received a gold certification, which was highly unusual for a renovation. But because of good practices, that little school got the highest rating around. So there are things that we can do in this application, again, to evaluate the companies that apply. If someone comes before us and says, no, we've never done any project that ever came in under LEED, I would personally have a hard time with what they're giving us, especially in this day and age where it's such an important piece of building. But there could be someone that never has done it, and we want to know. So that's just one example. Those points are points we decide how much it's worth to us, because after all of this, when they come in, we'll have a scoring matrix that we create to decide which firms we want to interview. Is there anything else? Okay. Do you feel confident in voting to allow the RFS working group to complete this work and then to submit it to the MSBA? All right, I'll entertain a motion to that effect. Tom? So moved, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay. And all in favor? Okay, anyone opposed? And then no abstentions. All right. Dan, is that adequate for us to be able to go forward now?
I think so.
I think so too.
I'm agent.
I
I'm not doing this to me. I'm doing this
No,
for the
I know.
building committee.
You wanted to make sure.
And the Peabody School District.
Yes.
It's just that I've done it before, so
Right.
I'm better suited to make the changes. after I hear what you folks want.
You will all receive the completed document. It's in pieces right now. And there are still a couple of areas that are being fine-tuned, as you can tell. There are some typos that are being corrected. But when that's complete, before it gets sent in, we will send it to all of you for your review. And I thank you for looking at that, because it is important. The more eyes that look at it, the better off we'll all feel, because this is really important. Okay. All right, with that being said, I'm going to have Dave and Sam give you a quick overview of the geothermal visit. And I want you to understand the reason that we had a visit to see the geothermal project at Essex North Shore, not saying that we're going to do a geothermal project for the high school project, but being able to look at different ideas and different energy sources and things going forward, it just expands the knowledge of the committee and helps make decisions that much easier. Because going forward, there are all kinds of different things that can help with this building. So,
I'll defer to
David,
Sam.
Sam, I do want to tell everybody, these two guys asked some of the best questions on this tour. They really did. I was impressed. I really was, just listening to the questions about the finance, and Essex North Shore gave us all the materials on how they financed this through grants and government grants and infrastructure and all kinds of different things. And then they were asking for like real financial questions: return on investment, how long does this last, what about replacements? Great questions. It was a lot of fun. And I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Well, it was very interesting, and I felt the person who led the meeting on their side was, and I apologize, I'm trying to remember his name.
Ryan Marks.
Excellent. And he was Jim's counterpart over at the Essex Tech. And Superintendent Heidi Riccio came shortly thereafter. In a way, it's apples and oranges, but even it being apples and oranges, there were some takeaways, at least I found. One was integrating, so the premise was they were building geothermal infrastructure for about 1/10 of the space of what this would be.
30,000 square feet.
Right, and they were doing it as part of a comprehensive, almost like, so they have a brand new high school across the street, and they have an older, called a lower camp, or maybe even it's called maybe an upper campus of multiple buildings that over a course of years they're doing to extend the useful life. And so the parallels could be, at least the hope here is that we have a main core that's brand new here, but we're hoping to reutilize and elevate the field house and the Performing Arts Center. And so, they did certain things that I could see being done here, where they upgraded the windows. They upgraded the exterior to make it match with composite. The use of materials. Epoxy floors, and which I could see a lot of that in shop areas. So it wasn't just about the geothermal. Their challenges were with their local plant, their electric, which is through Danvers, and that was a challenge. It may be a challenge for us. How they financed it was through an ESCO, which is an I'm trying to remember what the acronym is for, but they financed it that way, and it guaranteed that it would meet certain thresholds such that you know, the challenge is the Essex Tech had to put up the money up front and bond it, and then the savings. So what, in theory, you keep your budget level with whatever you were paying for usage, and the savings that you realize through this pays the debt service. And I've had a bit, you know, in my past, before new regulations, it was a bill of goods sold in a district I had where the savings weren't realized. And they just started. I guess they're going on I hope it works out for them. But, you know, those were, I mean, those were my takeaways. I don't know what yours were.
But Sam, or Beverly, wasn't there a program in place for this that guaranteed?
The government,
The government
yes.
guarantees the payback
They had
on
to
the
go
service,
through.
on this type of investment. But there was a pay down that was guaranteed by the government.
Yeah, that's what I was
It
just
was a
looking
new thing
for.
that they just got.
Yeah, they got into a special
Yeah.
new program, and it's still in existence right now. Who knows how long government programs will last? But that guaranteed, and that was why they went with it, because it was kind of a win-win situation. They weren't going to lose any money, and it took a while for the Energy Subcommittee to decide on this, because they were really investigating this, the company that they had looked into and the entire process. Because just recently, before this, they were doing a cogeneration plant at the school, and it was with National Grid, and National Grid was going to buy all the gas produced by the the waste processing, and it fell through because the government program wasn't there to guarantee that the school was not going to lose money, because they would not do that. It would have fallen back on the communities. So they cut it. They said, no, we're not going to do it. And it seemed ideal. It was a wonderful project in theory, using the cafeteria waste and some of the waste from animals, you know, on farm, and just didn't go through. So when they came up with this, with the geothermal project, they were very cautious. And then whatever that program, I can't find the name quickly in this document, but it was from the Department of
Energy Resources, DOER.
DOER, yeah, that guarantees that they're going to cover the cost of the installation and the...
And they partnered with a firm called EEI, I think. I've never
Yes.
heard of them myself, but... and it was turnkey, at least. They did everything. I don't know what their experience is outside of Essex Tech. I mean, to me, my only concern, I try to take away what I can, it's just scale, right? For that project, and given our scale, would be, you know, I would have felt better if we toured something that was closer to the scope that we were looking to do. But that's me.
You know, again, I was quite satisfied with, you know, the way he proposed it to us and how it worked. And Brian was very in depth as to what was going on, and he had every answer that every answer for every question we asked him. You know, before that, I had never heard of geotechnical and all that stuff, but it was described in length. And my biggest drawback was if it's guaranteed by the government, and that's not always a good thing, but if it's guaranteed by the government on more or less a payback of savings, then it's something that we shouldn't discard. We should at least take an attempt to look at it and see exactly what they want. You know, we're in the infancy stage now. Let's just try to take as much as we can, and if this is adaptable to the new school, then, you know, we should definitely look at it. But you know, it was on a small scale.
Yes.
at the
It
ag.
was, and it really was designed to just get that
A couple
door
of
open.
buildings that, that they had to do, and they did have the remodel and putting windows and facades and stuff like that, so there's an outside cost that they had to incur. But with a new facility, we won't have to incur those costs because it'll be part of the design and part of the makeup of the school. So is there a lot of savings other than having a remodel? Absolutely. Whether or not it's the best fit for the new high school is I think we need some more experts on it to actually let us know what's going to take place and a guarantee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And honestly, that was why we just wanted to have people take a look at it, because it's something that will probably come up as we have an energy subcommittee and talk about how are we going to power this high school. When it was built, PV Veteran Memorial High School was all electric. That was very innovative at the time. And PV's Electric was a huge partner with that, PMLP, but also this was built around the same time as the Welch. They were the only all-electric schools around, all-electric heat and of course the power. So here we are 50 years later, we're looking at the new energy models, and I know Jim Politano had to miss that trip. And Ryan Monk can't wait to talk to Jim, because Jim has worked on geothermal installations and projects, and he really knows about it. And we have basically an in-house resident expert that can help us with this. So it was a field trip to just let people know what's out there. And I am welcoming any ideas if anybody can think of anything else that you'd like to look at. Solar, solar heat, solar panels, whatever. We need to take a look and send people out just to get familiar with some of it and be able to come back and report to the committee. So I thank you for going, and I really was impressed with the questions you guys asked, because it was a great thing to see. Okay, are there any questions? Anybody else? All right. School visits, what I have, I'm working on 2 schedules with Waltham and Arlington, and trying to get those done before Christmas vacation. Hopefully, we'll be able to work it out. If not, those will go into January, which is okay. But are there any other matters that anyone has to bring forward? Okay, I'm going to have the mayor speak.
Yep, just thank you, Bev. Real quick. I just wanted us to start giving some thought. I don't think we really have to come up with our plan until January, February, once we have a project manager, we start getting into that process. But I do want to maybe add to a future meeting just committee meetings that we need to have. And we've already touched a little bit on it. But I was thinking in terms of specific items like CTE, like security, like athletic and performing arts, technology. I just wrote down energy as well. Those are meetings that I think we're going to have to take in smaller working groups that was mentioned. But also please give some thought to other particular subject areas that we should be looking at as specific items. Those are just a few that I was writing down as we spoke. The other thing too is stakeholder meetings. I think we need to meet with the teachers. I think we need to meet with some students. I think we need to meet with the neighborhood. Those meetings have to take place as well. So again, we're not there yet, but I do want to start prioritizing some meetings. I really think it's important for us to hear from the teachers pretty quickly, actually, after the new year. Meeting with some student leadership groups. At some point, meeting with the neighbors once we start really honing in on the site where we may go here. But also, there's so many components to this. And some have some action working groups that we need to start. So give some thought to that, other stakeholders that we should be touching base with, and then other specific working groups that we may need to start.
I think you had mentioned before, maybe the business community, especially with an expanded CTE component. I thought that's something you might have mentioned.
Yeah, I've thought that we should have somebody, a couple members of the Chamber of Commerce or other groups come in during that time, CTE, and at least weigh in and give their thoughts on what they're seeing in the market, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And Dan prepared, I'll call in you a second, but Dan prepared a list a long time ago. I think it was August of 2024 of, potential working groups
Yeah, yep.
that we definitely need to form. And the good thing about having those and finding out people interested in those would be, like for a school visit, I want to have someone there that's interested in the security of the building.
Yeah,
Because,
no, that's going to be
you know,
key.
I wanted everybody to see the geothermal project because the pipes looked good, okay? Now, if I brought a plumber and Dave basically knew how the operation worked, that was good. I didn't know what questions to ask. And I'm using that as an example because if we go look at a school, we're all going to be looking at different things. But having people from those different points of view will be important. They may not be people that are actual members of this committee, but they will be people that have a specific focus that they want to look at. So we'll be expanding the number of people, not only that are working with us, but that are going on field trips. Dan, and I keep calling them field trips because that's a happy thought. Dan, go ahead.
One group that I don't want us to forget about are the veterans, because this is Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, and there'll be stuff that we want to keep or put in one place, and what do we bring over and that sort of thing. And I hope your husband is one of those people I'm working with. The other thing that I just want to throw out there now, and Bev and I had a discussion about this a little while ago, is where do we want to have those meetings?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Going back to the Higgins process, which involved a lot of the working groups, was we had the Kylie available to us. We don't have that anymore. So is there a place, given traffic, given what's open and available, what's handicapped accessible and so forth, think about where we could have those meetings that are convenient to everybody, that could accommodate not a huge group, but a 10 to 20 people maybe, and think about what's in the inventory, not only of city facilities, but also maybe some private spaces somewhere in the community to do that.
Yeah.
Good, I just wanted to bring that up so we can start kind of giving some real thought to, and then after the new year, maybe start coming up with a timeline for meetings and things like that, and prioritizing who we want to meet with first. But I know there's already been CTE discussion, and I know Brooke and her team have already been having some internal discussions, but I think we need to start really creating these working groups and the stakeholders who we want to meet with, and start coming up with a timeline as to when we want to meet with them. And I think a lot of that has to be done in 2026. So some of them have to be in the early part of 2026.
Yes. Dwight.
So somebody mentioned about Higgins and how you guys knew that you wanted to have the houses, whatever the names are, I forget. There was no.
Oh, the setup.
There was no. When I was there, those didn't have those names and whatever. But
Right.
so I would hope that somebody in the administration, like the principal, the superintendent, has an idea about what you want. Do you want a 4-story building? Do you want a 9th grade floor, 10th grade floor, 11th grade floor, 12th grade floor, or is there so much intermingling and stuff like that? I mean,
Yeah, there's a lot more intermingling.
Because the higher you go,
There's a lot more
smaller
intermingling in high
footprint
school
is.
in terms of the options for courses and things like
Right.
that. We have seen 9th grade academies as sort of helping the transition.
Just figure-
Yeah, but in general, there's a lot of kids that might take different level courses and have the flexibility to take courses. And I know, we have Tiara's here with math, and there could be a sophomore taking a senior math class because of whatever their ability is, and that's okay. So it's a little bit more free at the high school than it is at the middle school. So we wouldn't necessarily want to separate it by grade, but there are different wings that we could do, and have science together, and have we can do things like that. And I think looking at the buildings will be really important for us. Of like, what does Waltham do? What does Medford do? What does Arlington do?
We saw a really cool school in Connecticut. This past year, we went for like a PD, and they actually break their schools up almost like a tech school, but they can pick like academic majors almost. Like, so if those kids, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a major where you're going into, I want to be a CTE. They could be like, oh, I really want to become, we have business now, which is like the CTE. But say you want to become a performing arts and you want to get into that, they actually had like a whole wing that was performing arts, and they had like a wing that was STEM, and then they had like a wing that was, so they could even, it doesn't have to be grade, it could even be just
By discipline.
future careers of our students.
Interesting.
Yeah, I only mention, I mean, I'm not your guy, believe me. But I only
But I
mention
like-
that
I liked how that school was
because
set up, and they-
when you go to meet with these people, it's better you telling them what you want than them telling you what you want. If you
No, that's
already know.
definitely the plan, is
Yeah.
for us to guide the conversation about where we're headed and what our vision is and what our, focal points are on
Yeah,
what
and
we're
maybe,
about.
maybe
Have
with
that
their
drive our
experience, they
space.
can tell you the
Yeah.
pitfalls.
Yeah.
You can do this, but don't do that.
Because things are different now than when this school opened. We were talking about this yesterday, that when it opened, it was a house system, and there was the science corridor, and there was the business corridor, and all the math classes were in one corridor, and the history. That's changed, and even just the administration of the students, where they are in the building and how they're set up, it's all changed now. And yet the building was built to accommodate those types of schedules. So it's really going to be interesting. Josh and Brooke were working on that. That's going to go in the RFS to just be able to help explain what we want.
Yeah, and it was built for 3 grades, not 4.
At the
Exactly.
time, and
Right.
everything.
Yep. Yep. Maybe we'll get a D house now.
Maybe.
Is there anything
No, I
else?
think that's it.
Okay, Josh?
Yep, that's good.
Are you all set? Everybody all set? Thank you all very much. Just so you know, you have December off. So we'll be flying back and forth with emails to get ready for, talking about meetings in January. But please enjoy the holidays, and thank you very much for helping. Hopefully, next time we'll have an online component of the meeting for people. And happy Thanksgiving for all.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.